Hello, everybody. I would officially welcome to today's webinar. My name is Rachel McIntosh, and I'm a podcast host at Finance Magnates, and I'm going to be moderating this discussion today. And of course, I'm very excited to have two of the Forex industry's top liquidity experts with me. We have Jay Mawji, who's the managing director at IX Prime, and Chris Hussein Nelson, who's the head of institutional sales at IX Prime. I'm going to let both of them introduce themselves a little more thoroughly in just a moment, but before then, a couple of housekeeping matters before we get started. Our discussion today is going to last for roughly 40 minutes, and after that, we will be opening up the floor for questions. So if you have questions or comments at any point during today's webinar, be sure and send those through, and we'll do our very best to get to you at the end of the session. If we don't have time to get to your question today, we'll do our very best to follow up with you after the session is over. This webinar also will be available, on demand after today's live session. So if you miss anything, no worries at all. Go ahead over to the Finance Magnates YouTube channel and you will find that. You'll also receive a link in your email to this recording. And last but not least, we'd love for you to share today's webinar throughout your social network. So without any further ado, let's get this conversation rolling. Gentlemen, welcome. I'd like to ask you both to introduce yourselves, starting with Chris.
Hi there. Chris Hussein Nelson. I've been doing this for over 2 decades now. The vast majority of my career has been spent at FXCM, so hopefully I've got a half decent insight into liquidity provision and the retail brokerage world.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Chris. And Jay, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, Jay Mawji, Managing Director here at Infinox /IX Prime. I've pretty much been with Infinox 10 plus years. Been here from the beginning and seen the company do some incredible things. One of which is the IX Prime brand, which is our institutional business, which we're here to talk about today. So thank you everybody for joining us, and Rachel for the very strong introduction. I feel like I can only go downhill from here.
Oh, it's going to be great. So let's dive right in. So Jay, tell us a little bit about IX Prime.
Right. So IX Prime is essentially the institutional divisional brand under Infinox, the brokerage. Over the years, we've seen an increasing demand for institutional liquidity technology type services. And over the last 2 years, we've really cut out from the Infinox structure a dedicated and focused team to offer these services under the IX Prime brand. The uptake and the interest in our offering has been incredible over the last 1.5 years, really. Actually, just surprising at how well we've been able to take what appear to be a relatively simple product and offer it in a really personable way and keep kind of developing and delivering and re-delivering to our clients. So IX Prime is, in some way, the institutional focus brand under Infinox. As a business, the brand of Infinox is global and well known. And you'll know that the brand has regulation in multiple jurisdictions, offices around the world. Really is a true global player.
Absolutely. So Chris, let's get more into the topic of today's webinars, which is finding a good liquidity provider. Why is it more important than ever to have a good liquidity provider?
Sure. So it's a great question. Look, solid, stable, robust pricing has always been important. But where we are in the cycle in our industry, the FX and CFD brokerage space is so competitive, ultra competitive, maybe more competitive than ever. IX Prime, as Jay pointed out, is the institutional division of a retail brokerage, Infinox. So we have the benefit of understanding how a retail brokerage works. So we're not a standalone liquidity provider and have our own opinions. We can base our opinions on what we see from our existing brokerage, Infinox. So what I'm saying here is we understand the pain points of retail brokerage. So that allows us to develop bespoke services to meet the needs of the brokerages around the planet. As the industry's evolved, sadly, there's fewer and fewer USPs available that allow you to readily stand out from the crowd. So as a broker, you know that it costs a small fortune to win a client via marketing dollars, time spent on phones, energy. it's one thing winning that business, but the key to it is once you've won it, just retain it.
Absolutely.
And that's where the key component of choosing the correct liquidity provider becomes so important. So from our angle, we know the emphasis for us is providing consistency of execution, understanding the client's order flow, be it spreads, execution time, also just a lack of technical disruption, because anything that happens to us downstream affects the retail broker. And like I said earlier, the main point is you've spent a lot of marketing dollars trying to win those clients, so you don't need the LP losing them for you. So over the last decade, it's been really interesting though to watch the evolution of brokerages and how they set up their businesses when choosing LPs. In the old days, maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't uncommon to see a brokerage choose 10 liquidity providers, letting us all fight it out inside an aggregator, and whoever gave the best price won. But as the market's matured, I think retail brokers have understood that it's a really inefficient use of capital. So nowadays, it seems more that brokers choose 2, maybe 3 LPs, because it's more efficient from cash allocation. And that in turn puts us under pressure to ensure that we provide a really good service. So that slimming down of the liquidity pool means choosing a full package partner is more important than ever. And if we don't provide a consistent, robust service, there's other LPs that they can choose. And I guess my last point is, again, going back to Infinox being a global brokerage, we recognise geographical nuances. What might be important to a European broker maybe is not as important to a Middle Eastern broker. So we have an experienced team that can handle understand global needs. I guess the overriding message is that we're flexible. We understand that one size fits all approach just doesn't work in this marketplace.
Right. It's like the key to a truly global service is actually having expertise at the local level, which is, I think, very interesting.
Yeah.
So both of you, I'd like to direct this question at you. So just give me a brief overview. When an institution is looking for a liquidity provider, what are the specific qualities and services that they should be seeking? So in other words, what does the full package of a liquidity provider look like?
Yeah, I'd probably say you want to break this down into segments or pieces that fit together. And I'd say I'd probably put it down into 6 segments. I'd say you do competitive pricing and commercials. That's extremely important. You've got to look at technology. So what is your connectivity? What are your trading tools? You've got to look at how you optimize execution. You've got to look at services. So what comes in addition to all of that? I think relationships is critical. So I put relationships in there. And probably as well, you've got to look at regulation and safety of funds. So I'd say there's about 6 segments that form what I would say is the full package, really. Okay,
so let's break this down a little bit. I'd like to kind of touch on each of these points. So the first was competitive pricing and commercials, excuse me. Is that correct?
That's right.
Great. So maybe, Chris, I'll direct this to you. Can you talk to us a little bit about competitive pricing and commercials?
Yeah, of course. Look, historically, everyone's always concentrated on the tightest of spreads and the lowest commissions, and that's natural and understandable. It's definitely still the case today. But I think, again, the evolution of liquidity, these shouldn't be selling points now. They should be prerequisites. So you need to be able to offer euro dollar at 0.1 for 16 hours a day. That should be the standard. Healthy top of book, competitive margins, low rejection rates, all of this bundled into all of this in a low latency environment. So as I said, this isn't a selling point now. It's a necessity and a prerequisite. So IX Prime, we can tick all of those boxes. We do give institutional spreads. We can send out granular hour-by-hour statistics on each pair. So we can understand the geographical nuances. If Asian brokers need a tight dollar yen price, we can be reactive and tighten up where necessary. We price via LD4, so a London-based server, so latency is never an issue. And yeah, again, we can be flexible on margins. We can go up to 200 to 1 if necessary. But yeah, again, it's about being clear communication so we can give clients raw demos so they can see live pricing in a live environment. And again, I'm boring myself saying this, but this is now not sort of something that's a selling point. It should be the standard and a prerequisite. And I'm pleased to say IX Prime can offer all of those.
Fabulous. Yeah. So that's sort of the baseline. So let's move on to the next point, which was technology, specifically connectivity and trading technology. So Jay, I'll direct that towards you.
So yeah, the whole technology piece is, as Chris kind of alluded to, the pricing and commercials, is extremely, obviously connectivity and execution is equally paramount. And really around connectivity, that's something that we focus a lot on. We work with PrimeXM, for a bridge that allows us to be in one of the, dare I say, one of the most well-recognized, trusted, respected infrastructures, allows us to connect to a multiple range of brokers through their bridges, API connections, and we build strong relationships with them. So in terms of connectivity, it really allows us to work with a number of providers in a strong and robust global environment. And trading technology that comes with that, and this is a piece I really enjoy working with, is around the tools that we can add to that. And we have an in-house tool, a position keeper really, and we found it makes such a big difference. And the position keeper essentially gives our downstream brokers a central place to be able to log in and analyze a lot of what's happening with their flows. So on the top level, you can look at where your net positions are, your exposure per currency pair, per instrument, market movements, etc. So you've always got a top line snapshot of where you are. But as you run your brokerage through the hours every day, you want to start running your reconciliations. It can be done through this tool. You can do your margin checking. You can check your positions back against LPs. As you get through to the end of the day, you can run your end of day reports. And so really, when we talk about this position keeper tool that we're giving out to our institutional clients, it's something that allows them to make running their brokerage easier. It allows them to be able to check what's happening and allow them to be responsive. You can build your VAR analysis out of it. It just gives you this wealth of services that you can tap into. And that forms a really important part of being informed and being connected, because being connected is one really important piece, but what do you do with the data? What do you do with that connection? And that's really what this position keeper is doing, is setting out this, making it easier to run a brokerage. And just touching on something Chris said earlier, you go back 10 years ago, it was, what's the best deal I can get on Eurodollar? And we all whisper, but, we've been to the race to zero now. We're there. And actually, it's a difficult place. It's a difficult place to compete from at zero. But these tools and these kind of packages really make a big difference to that.
Absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about optimization of execution. So Jay, I'd like you to continue talking about this.
Yeah, this is probably, I said, the third segment, very important piece of it as well, is it's great if you're trading, as Chris talks about dollar yen, it's great if you're trading dollar yen, but when your clients are trading dollar yen, you may need a bit more than what's standard being offered. And the whole optimization of execution piece means that we look at that and say, you want more top of book, you want quicker fills, you want them a little bit outside the edge of market hours. This is what your clients demand. So it's fine if we quote you a price for dollar yen, but if we don't fill it and we don't give you what you say you're going to get, it doesn't really work. So the order optimization allows us to go out and find suitable pricing that matches top of book, execution, fill, etc., and really start to build that model. And again, it's so important, because as a brokerage, you can buy, we'll go back to the 0.1 euro dollar, but if it doesn't work for your client flow, it's useless. And that's really what the optimization comes through. And we'll talk about relationships, but that all drives down to that if we can have that connectivity, if we can have that data, if we can optimize flow, if we can understand your relationship, that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. So what about, I think the next point was services. So specifically having to do with credit, NBP, and swap-free services. Chris, I'd like you to address this point.
Yeah, sure. So as I said, so in the retail brokerage world, it's harder and harder to stand out. And it's the same in the liquidity world. Selling Eurodollar at 0.1 isn't a selling point anymore. So what we feel is you have to be with an LP that can offer the whole package. And you've kindly pointed out three aspects: credit, negative balance, protection, and swap-free products. This all funnels back to us being a global brokerage, because different end users have different needs. So if we look at credit as a worked example, we know that FX and CFDs is a 24-hour business. Even last month, we had a flash crash in gold, and then everyone was up at 1 o'clock. And what happens?
At 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
We won't mention the Turkish lira on Monday, Joe, when my wife was woken up. But credit. It's important to recognise that, say, we work with Turkish brokerages. Their banking system closes hours ahead of us or before us. So if there's a market movement at 9 p.m. at night, we can't draw up the shutters and say, nope, not our problem. We have to work as a partner in the truest sense of that word. So we're very relaxed about giving clients a fixed credit amount, which we can pre-arrange. But also on top of that, there's emergency credit, because we don't know if gold is going to drop 2% tonight. And the worst thing we find is liquidations for clients means it's the end of a relationship. And we're going to talk about communication relationships a bit later. But if you liquidate your client, there's not a great deal you can come back from that. So we have to understand the end user. We have to understand their business. And that takes time. And quite again, back to an earlier point, because we've got an experienced team, we tend to know a lot of our clients. They're by referrals. So we have an element of trust is already inbuilt. But we know, like I said, credit and helping is an important facet of this business, because, again, Infinox is a retail brokerage and we understand the needs of the end clients. Negative balance protection, again, going back to the geography, side-set brokers and all EU brokers need to offer their end retail clients negative balance protection. So we can assist with that and they pass it down to us. Swap-free accounts in MENA, very, very important. If we didn't offer, I'd say, swap-free negative balance protection, credit, and all we offered was a tight euro-dollar price, we're mature enough to know that that's just not going to cut it in this world. That puts you in with the other dozen LPs that might be watching this. We've got to stand out in the crowd, which means we've got to offer everything. And I'm pleased to say, IX Prime, we've got an experienced team that understand the business, and we can offer those extras.
Absolutely. So I want to go back to a point that you mentioned just a moment ago, which is relationships. Really, how do you nurture relationships? How do you take care of them? How do you sustain them over the long term?
All right. I'm pleased my wife isn't here to listen to this, but it's all about communication. In any relationship here, husband and wife, Liquidity Provider, it's all about communication and knowing that you're working with an experienced team. Having done this for nearly 2 decades, I'm acutely aware that you do have that monthly call with your client to talk about the kids, the football team, have a lunch, have a beer, and that's all part of the game and to be expected. But what I've realised is that the time your broker needs you is when there's a problem. And the easiest thing to do as a human being is not see that phone call or not see that Skype message and just ignore it.
Right.
The team here, we know what we're doing, and we pride ourselves on being readily available and communicating in a clear and concise manner. And as a worked example, I'm pleased that anecdotally we had a comment last month that a new client of ours was amazed that he gets to talk to our traders, where he's been with other LPs and it's just you talk just to the salesperson, which is great, but the salesperson can't help you 24/7. So what we do at IX Prime, for every new relationship, we set up a Skype group and we actively encourage that every trader at the client's end is on that Skype group, and you have access to every single trader at our team as well. So you have the salesman whose job is just to keep the relationship going, but you have support and you have traders. So there is fluid, concise and two-way communication. And if there's a problem, there's no hiding place, which keeps us on our toes, but also means the client gets a first-class service.
On the point about relationships too, is I think at the end of the day, we're people, right? We're normal people, we face people. And I think that's something very much about our culture at Infinox and in the Housekeeping brand is when we're on Skype groups or when we're communicating with clients, it's perfectly fine to have, very open, basic level people communication. It's so important. And if something isn't right, to be able to just say, hold on a sec, I think I got that wrong. Let me just double check it or whatever it might be. So that people relationship, I think people relationship really helps that general, commercial relationship as well. I'd like to think people say we're nice guys. You'll find out, of course, but.
Yeah, absolutely. So to just taking a really holistic approach to meeting clients where they are and being available whenever you are needed.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the last of these 6 points, which is regulation and safety of funds. So Jay, is this something that you can address?
Sure, I'll have a go at this one. We know the regulated environment is just critical. It's critical for everybody, really. It creates the right environment, the right structure for us to be able to conduct our businesses and our services, which is so important. It sets the groundwork for how we interact and what we can expect from each other. And it goes further. It protects each other, but it also allows us to be in the right environment to continue to develop our product and our offering. So in totality, we see regulation as a very, very important piece of this and something that we embrace. And I mentioned earlier that the Infinox brand is, as everybody knows, has multiple regulations. So that can really help because the client needs to face, particularly the regulation that suits them, that matches them. That's very, very important. And just going on from that flows the safety of funds. And we see this across our industry, all the way top to bottom, all the way through. But, funds, PSPs, banking, holding of money, etc., is an ever-changing, environment or section of this industry. And that's something we work very hard on to make sure that we hold funds in segregated client accounts, even for our institutional clients. We will categorize you with retail permission. So we may face you on regulation stuff as a professional client, but your funds are always held as a retail client in segregated client trust accounts. You could be Barclays Bank, Commonwealth of Australia, Citibank. We work with some of the biggest names to make sure that we're holding your funds securely, safely. And Chris used a case example there, and I feel like if I don't add one of my own, then I've let the team down. But I did have one incident this week where somebody requested withdrawal, relatively early in the UK time. We processed it out and they got it back. It was a fairly large, withdrawal, but they got it back in a couple of hours. And I did get a comment today to say, how did that work? Should we use that method again? And that's exactly the point, because we work with major banks, because we process these things quickly. That we're holding your funds safely, securely. You get your funds in when you need them in, you get them out when you need them in. And that's the combination of the regulation and the safety of funds that's really, really important for us and for our clients.
Absolutely. So kind of taking all of these 6 points and the last 15 minutes of our discussion, if we're going to kind of boil that down into a single question, what I'd like to know is, what are the qualities that institutions should look for in a liquidity partner? Let's kind of put a bow on the things we just talked about.
Okay, so as Jay mentioned, making sure they're regulated. That's the first thing. But looking at the entire package, I think, again, going back to the evolution of liquidity and brokers' requirements, I think we've gone past the days of, is it 0.1 on euro dollar and can I get $2, $3, $4 per million commission? It's so much more than that.
Yeah.
So I think, to answer your question, it's making sure that every box is ticked in terms of product range. It's not just a handful of FX and indices. Healthy top of book, competitive margins, all the stuff that I said earlier that comes as a prerequisite. But the biggest takeaway I'd like for people to take away from this nice chat is there is so much more that you should be asking from your liquidity provider, which is the additional services, the credit facilities, the negative balance protection, the swap free, something we haven't actually talked about, the ability to do EMIR reporting, being able to, I guess the biggest overriding factor is being able to understand how to run a retail broker. And I say that is one of our biggest strengths, is because of the intrinsic link with Infinox, we understand the pain points that every business is going through. And if someone comes up with an issue, it's not like it's the first time that we've heard it. We'll be fully aware because of our retail brand in the background.
Absolutely. So if we kind of go a little bit further into that and really talk again, but I'd like to talk a little bit more in detail about how to nurture those connections and nurture those partnerships.
Yeah, good question. I agree with Chris there, and actually, if you sum it up in one way, it really comes down to partnerships, and we've summarised that as making sure that we understand your business, you understand our business, and by that I mean, from our business, we have policies, we have processes, we have reasons we do certain things, and being able to communicate with clients why we do it, why we do things our way, so they understand how we work. It gives us the chance to discuss if that's suitable for them. Does that need to be molded? Do we need to be a bit more adaptive to them? And the other side of that is working closely on a day-to-day basis with our teams and understanding what do your clients want, what are your processes, what are your views, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And that communication, that constant communication piece, that relationship piece, is what gets us to the point where we actually provide what we think is the perfect product for you, and we want you to think that you're getting the perfect service for us. And that's really where the heart of the partnership comes from. So over time of working together, developing together, learn from your mistakes occasionally, we start to develop really, really strong partnerships. And I think that's where the real value comes from. We can lay out a whole host of incredible products and services, but actually if we don't put them together in a mechanism that works for you, at the end of the day, they just don't have value. And that's the real value for us in partnership. And if my CEO was listening, he would always remind us that, we started as a people's business, and we started as a pick up the phone and talk to people, communicate. And, when you put that into a mix, that's just so important for us.
Absolutely. So, Chris, do you have any other thoughts, things you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, Jay picked up on a great point that it's just about listening. Listen to what clients want and need. We have healthy debates internally about products. So we're keeping a keen eye on the crypto markets. It seems like it's here to stay. So we just maybe look out for us increasing potentially our crypto offering. Equities are very much back in fashion with the advent of MT5. So we're looking potentially at increasing our equity CFD offering. Again, just becoming that true multi-assets liquidity provider, ETFs, digital instruments, etc. Always keeping on top of our white label offering as well. So it's just listening and being agile and responsive.
Definitely. We are nearing the end of our discussion today, and we have a question from the audience, and I'd like to remind our audience members to send in your questions and comments. So the first question that we have is directed towards Jay. It says, Jay, you mentioned about the 6 areas that one should look for in a liquidity provider. There's one aspect that we'd like you to elaborate upon, which is how is IX Prime different from other liquidity providers, and specifically about technical support. In this age where a lot depends on support, to what extent does a liquidity provider, and especially, IX Prime, provide technical support to institutional clients?
Actually, that's a great question. I'm glad someone asked that. I can see you asked actually. It's a great question because that's a really big part about what we do is when we talked about how we create these relationships in these groups. But when it comes to the technical support, we really like to get in close with our clients. So when they do have queries around how we're connecting, there's a price gap somewhere, there's something's not working in the connection, the filter, something, we really like to work really closely with them and make sure that we are, through our personal relationship with them, but also from our experience, able to reach over the fence, as it were, and help them in their configurations, reflect back how we're configuring. It just helps each other run their businesses. And I probably best term it as the reach over, but not in an offensive way, but in a kind of friendly, like we're going to come over the fence and help your neighbor out. It's very much like that for us, is to be able to have that relationship, because it means A, we help you, B, we understand you better, and C, when we're trying to develop technology on our side and we're trying to make these changes, we're always thinking about what you need. And I would definitely say that's really a strength of ours, that is part of that relationship piece. Is we really want to help, we really want to share experience. And we understand a lot of guys need that sometimes. Sometimes it's difficult to manage your own technology stack, your own, etc. So that combination is very, very important for us.
Absolutely. Chris, do you have anything to add to that as well?
Again, going back to communication, one of the things I've learned down the years is not trying to be a master of everything. So on our Skype groups, we make sure that there's a technical support guy on there, because if you come to me with a technical support question, you're probably going to get the wrong answer. But experience tells you that probably best not to even attempt. You've got to have the right people to fill the gaps. And yeah, like I said, these Skype groups are fantastic because we can have fluid, swift communication at all times.
Absolutely. Jay and Chris, I'd like to thank you so much. Before we go, can you tell our audience where they can find out more about IX Prime?
Yeah, so if you visit our website, infinox.com, infinox.co.uk, you'll see a tab at the top for IX Prime, or you can go directly to it, infinox.com/IX-Prime. But yeah, get in touch with us. We're happy to have a chat with you guys, and I think we'll get back to you on the follow-up questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to our audience. Thank you to both Jay and Chris. You guys are fabulous. I know I certainly learned a lot today. I hope our audience did as well. One more time, Jay, can you say that website?
A bit quick, was I? Sorry. If you go to infinox.co.uk, and you'll be able to click into the IX Prime section, or you can go infinox.co.uk/IX-Prime.
Amazing. Okay. Jay and Chris, a pleasure to talk to both of you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.